The title of our talk for this morning is Occult Resurrection in Tarot, and it deals with Tarot key number 20. Judgment, Hebrew letter Shin. On the surface, we look at this tarot key, and it looks as though it were imaging certain orthodox fallacies, certain orthodox thinking or ideas, like the immature nonsense, which I'm sure we're all familiar with, having to do with the idea that there will come a day when literally, Gabriel, which is all mispronounced by the way, it's Gabriel, not more poetic too? Anyway, there will come a day when Gabriel will come and blow his horn, and then, oy vey, or God help you, because you'll need it. Because then you're going to be looked over, and looked over not from surfaces, you understand, but the looked over will be through and through. And zip, your file will be gotten out, on the heavenly computer, which is even more efficient, obviously, than our computers. And your file will be gone over, and then Gabriel will say, down, fire, burn, you did so-and-so or failed to do it. This one, fine, whoosh, up. That one, I don't know, put him aside, purgatory temporarily till we make up our mind. Well, that's really not any more nonsensical than some of the things we've heard, believe me. But that is just surface thinking. In essence, we are looking upon the symbolic representation of a reality beyond realities. And of course, only those who have been trained in the secret wisdom of Israel would know what the true meaning is, in any case, of that which refers to the archangels. Only those trained in the secret wisdom of Israel would know what is involved when we talk about things like death, when we talk about things like resurrection, when we talk about things that have to do with finalities, whether it be heaven as we think of it or something other, or hell, whatever that means. I think those in a body usually know better than anyone else what it means until they've attained the ability to see the body as something other than we usually do. So only those who are trained in the secret wisdom of Israel can understand. And in understanding, they come to realize that resurrection is utterly, thoroughly, and completely dependent on something other than we think. In other words, the idea or even the word resurrection has to do with our ability to give rebirth to ourselves. We resurrect ourselves continuously when we have anything in the way of inspiration. There's a resurrection takes place within us, so that we have the idea of resurrection involved in more than one level. Now, according to all teachings that stem from our secret wisdom of Israel, the idea of death becomes a very profound part of the entire teaching and training system. That is, to come to understand the idea of death. Therefore, to come to understand what it is and what it is not. Therefore, as you heard from the reading of the meditation on this tarot key, you heard it mentioned that what appears like death, that is, death of the physical form, is to the higher consciousness that knows, is merely a transition of the awareness. But let me go into it a little more, and in terms of the symbolism and the various Kabbalistic meanings of the keys, so that your subconsciousness can start absorbing and assimilating the truth, the reality of this perpetual intelligence, because that's what Kabbalah gives, the kind of consciousness that is active in this Hebrew letter, the perpetual intelligence. Well, what does perpetual mean? It's another word for what we might call never-ending, or another word for what we might call beginningless, endless, or another word for what we might call foreverness. Like never the spirit was born, the spirit will cease to be never. Never was time, it was not. End and beginning are dreams. The idea of perpetual intelligence, then, and this Hebrew letter, and the symbolism of the tarot key, is making a statement, but then there's more than one statement in this key. But the first statement it is making is that death is an illusion, that death is not only an illusion, but that out of death comes something vastly more life, very much more life. It's making a statement that the coffins, you can see the coffins out of which these three figures are rising, or we should put it another way, they are standing in the coffins. Now these three figures, remember, represent, the male figure represents self-consciousness. In fact, he is the magician, but the magician having evolved to the most fantastic level that self-consciousness can have while it still walks the earth in a body. So the male figure is the magician, or self-consciousness, or the power of attention. The female figure, showing the blonde hair, is also indicating, although even the dark-haired female figure indicates the same thing, but the blonde hair is indicating a more intensive activity that involves the Empress, which, remember, is creative activity. It involves the female figure of the lovers, key 6, that is, the subconsciousness, or Eve, who is the mate or the partner or the polarity to Adam. But here, notice the male and female, as well as the child, are gray, because according to all the esoteric wisdom, and I know that you may have read books that say, oh, gray is such a sad color, and it's an unspiritual color, and it's a depressing color. But on the Kabbalistic tree of life, I'll have you note that gray is assigned to wisdom, the cosmic father. And gray is the color that we get at all times when we mix two pairs of opposites. That is, two perfect complementary colors always brings us gray. So that the balancing of opposites always gives us the wisdom. The gray here, then, is showing the ability and the capacity to balance the pairs of opposites, including what we might call life and death, incidentally, since this is showing a resurrection, but a resurrection of a very special kind. So we have and of course this female figure is also the portion, the creative and controlling portion of subconsciousness, the humanized subconsciousness as shown in key 8 strength, where subconsciousness, as you can see, the humanized subconsciousness is controlling the lion being the animal nature, incidentally, the vital animal soul which we share with all living creatures. And the female figure here is actually portraying all the female figures in the tarot key, but having arrived at a state that is quite perpetual, that is continuous. In other words, and this is shown by the number, the number 20, reduces to 2, and 2, tarot key number 2, is the High Priestess, from which all of the fluidic waters start. Take a look at the High Priestess above you there, and you'll notice from the lap of the High Priestess, which is the cosmic principle of subconscious mind stuff, it is from that all the waters come. Here we see where they've gone. They started with the High Priestess, and you have the number 2. And you see where they've gone. They have emptied themselves into the ocean. Because this is obviously an ocean. It isn't a river, it isn't a pond, it isn't a pool or a stream. This is showing an ocean. But not only an ocean. And remember, all fluidic aspects, anything that shows water, is actually symbolically portraying the mind stuff of God, because there is nothing else. Wherever there's mind stuff, or wherever there's consciousness, wherever there's awareness, wherever there's livingness, it is a special expression of this fluidic mind stuff of God. When it's shown in one way, we show it with its specializations. Each of these tarot keys tells its special story, which we've been trying to help you to see. But here, we see an arrival. But not only do we see an arrival, we also, in the distance, as you see, we see glaciers. In other words, there's frozen water as well as the fluidic liquid water. And this is a very important thing to observe. You'll notice whenever we have mountaintops, we have a bit of the snow or the glacier. In other words, showing that wherever we reach heights of consciousness, we have that fluidic mind stuff in perfect control. It is being perfectly held. It doesn't wash back and forth like in wild waves. We are not caught in the traps. We are not immersed in the currents. We are not drowning in the backwashes of the waters. We are able to freeze the mind stuff as we need to. So that when we think of key 12, for example, the hangman, which you will see above you, remember that Hebrew letter means waters. It's one of the mother letters, meaning waters. And it shows the state of perfect meditation, where the hangman is portraying the consciousness that sees below the surfaces. It sees into things. It sees into everything. And it sees it by virtue of being able to remain stable. That is called the stable intelligence. That's the waters that we see here, remember, in another guise, in another way. With the Hebrew letter Aleph, the Fool, we see another one of the mother letters, and the Fool is up on top of a mountain getting ready for the next goal. Remember, that's Tarot Key 0. So that in Tarot Key 20, what we are seeing is the goal of the Fool, 0. And the Fool, remember, is just what the foolish call the divine wisdom, because they're not yet able to comprehend. So the goal, which you might also call the will of God, or the evolutionary compulsion, or the divine destiny, as shown by the Fool here, is being continuously remembered by the number 2 of Tarot Key 20, the perpetual intelligence. And continuously remembered, remember, because tarot key number 2, the High Priestess, which is the beginning of the flow of the waters of consciousness and evolution, is also the principle of memory, holding the Torah, which is the law, and the recordings of all our lives, all our acts, all our karma, all our doings and even non-doings, and not only ours, everything that lives is in the record of the cosmic mind stuff, being shown in all its various ways and expressions. So the perpetual intelligence here, amongst other things, means the ability never to forget that it is the goals, the evolution, the heights beyond for which life is fashioned, and that this is the meaning of life. It is the height and the depth of life. It is the flame of life. It is indeed the beginningless and endless goal as well as fulfillment. Because in this tarot key we're also being shown a state of awareness which is called fourth dimensional consciousness by some, except the word or even the term means many things to many people. But Dr. Case mentions in the fantastic lessons that you receive, which you're supposed to study at home, consistently, and perpetually with this perpetual intelligence. Dr. Case points out that you have many symbols here of what is considered this fourth dimensional consciousness, or the awareness that goes beyond the physical plane. That the 4 in itself has to do with the divine reason, or tarot key 4, the Empress. 4 is shown by the banner, incidentally, in more than one way, both because it's a square, also because of the equal-armed cross, and even because of its color. That the fourth dimension is being expressed here, and this banner, or fourth dimensional awareness, is being carried by what? Is being carried by Gabriel. But who and what is Gabriel? Gabriel literally means the might of God. Now that's the literal meaning of Gabriel, the Archangel Gabriel. Remember, each one of the archangels are an expression, a special expression of God in the area in which that particular portion of the divine substance is evolving or is bringing its particular influence for evolution. So that with the Archangel Gabriel, who incidentally is the Archangel of water too, and must be when you consider that we have here this fantastic ocean of consciousness. With this Archangel Gabriel, we have this declaration from the Secret Wisdom of Israel that the might of God is definitely working. All movement, all things, it is in action. And indeed, the might of God also means that it is an inexorable thing. In other words, what can fight against the might of God? Now, these 3 figures are nude. Wherever you see nude figures, what you see is the kind of honesty, an ability and a capacity to be honest. In other words, the ability to be honest with ourselves. Now, this is not as prevalent as we might think. Self-consciousness and subconsciousness are forever kidding each other because they're afraid of facing whatever reality is, you know. So that on the whole, we get ourselves in all kinds of trouble. Take a look at Tarot Key 16. There you have self-consciousness and subconsciousness, not only having been trying to hide in the Tower of Babel, but even clothes on. Clothed so they couldn't even see each other. Now, how do we know our own motivations when we have to hide from our own self? When the conscious and subconscious part of our being is unable to be able to see what it really thinks or feels, when it is unable to recognize the various immaturities, when it is unable to recognize the inevitable impact of certain destructive forces or evil forces that come from time to time and inevitably must on the plane of 3 dimensions, since this is the way evolution and growth takes place, as I pointed out before. For the privilege of having a physical vehicle, notice that these 3 figures stand in their coffins. They are not denying their bodies, their physical bodies. They stand in the coffins. Remember, that means they walk on earth. The true attained ones. They never for one moment try to deny the value or even the beauty and the glory of the physical plane. And indeed, this is one of the most extraordinary differences between the Western mystery training system and the Eastern training system. Because in this system, which is older than time, in this training system, which is not only older than time, but which lives in timelessness and is the gift to humanity from those timeless ones. In this system, we say consistently and continuously that we have to learn how to see the physical plane, how to act and be and do within the physical plane in a way other than the regular person. We have to stop being slave to the physical plane. We have to stop being deluded by the physical plane. But we have to start feeling a greater wondrousness and tenderness, a joy, a rapture at the fantastic privilege of having this vehicle. Now then, how can we understand this further? Remember, here we have the child here. First of all, we want to realize that the child is representing this regenerated personality of the previous Tarot Key 19, the children of the sun. But here you have the child facing the might of God. In other words, personality is open. It's turned its back on what you might call the West, or it has turned its back on living from the erroneous levels. Instead of thinking of tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow, the child is turned back from whence it came to the East, where we come out of the East in the Tarot, remember, and we go to the West. West is attainment, East is beginnings. And yet, in this Tarot Key, we're being told something else, though. This child, which is regenerated personality, and which those who have attained the levels of true knowledge of what mercy is and who express it, who know this, the knowledge of what time is and is not, has to do with the fact that in 4th dimensional consciousness, also called perpetual intelligence, you experience that other level of being, the higher soul, which never was born, which never will die. And with it there's also a peace, and there is a love There's a height and a depth that no words can describe, because they go beyond words. So that here we are being shown a kind of consciousness, you see, which all of us are destined sooner or later to have. Let's hope sooner rather than later, as long as we're in time and space. But even though we're destined to attain, we have to come to the point where our activity is such that we continuously are reminded of who and what we are. We remember. Furthermore, in order to have this kind of consciousness, that is, this knowledge of our immortality, because that's the real resurrection, our complete and thorough immortality, in order to have that, we have to bring our personalities, and that means our self and subconscious minds, into harmony one with another, and into harmony with the might of God, that is, to be guided by the divine will. This is the might of God. You already are under the wings of the Mighty One. You are being shown how, and you are being warmed. Maybe you're being set on fire in more ways than you know, in order to want to be utterly consumed by God, utterly, not for yourself, though there's nothing wrong with wanting it for yourself also, but so that you will have the rapture, the absolute and unspeakable rapture of being able to share it. What good is anything if you can't share it? I ask you, have you ever really been able to be full of joy and happiness? Really full of it, unless you had somebody to share it with? Do you think anything is worth anything unless you have somebody to share it with? That's why those who have experienced and who know the immortality of the soul, this true miracle, this wondrous spark of the flame of God, they know the love of God because they've learned how to love God. And with it then, with this love, they have become God's flame. And they have only one need: to help you become the same. They have only one desire, and only one, and that is to help you to see the miracle of life, to help you to become another flame to light other dark areas, to help you to become a conflagration, so that the Redeemer in you, the Messiah, the true Redeemer, will live and walk this earth, because only so shall it come, when there are enough of us spreading this love, this flame, this joy, and this knowledge of our immortality in God. Walk in that joy, live in it, drink it, sleep it. It is yours.